We have exciting news. As many of you are aware, Charles and I have published our final episode on the research of the life and times of William Branham. It has been an absolutely fascinating journey from start to finish, and we have put together what is definitely the most comprehensive study on what is called the message, the different versions of the message, and the different stage personas used by William Branham and his co-conspirators to create those message movements. We have 3 additional podcasts to release in that series, all recorded in one exhausting session that will address the many questions that have been sent in to us. The plan is to release those as podcasts starting next Monday, though we may not release them as a premiere, having chat, while we take a much overdue break. For those of you who have supported us in this journey after having escaped the message cult, ending this series on William Branham presents a huge problem. There is a mass exodus that would otherwise fizzle out. Social media such as YouTube is ranked based on activity and on content release. And should those 2 metrics die out, the likelihood of wandering souls who are trapped in the Branham cult might be limited as to what they can find. It's a problem that I have faced all along. I've tried to walk away from this several times, but each time, either the cult attacked and brought down one of our many social media accounts, or I would notice the traffic fading. Even though I don't push people to do so, those likes and those subscribes are extremely important for search engines. Simply put, we're seeing the largest exodus from the message and its splinter groups globally that we have ever seen, and we're not going to let that exodus fade. Last year, Charles and I stumbled onto something that neither of us had considered, and it is absolutely fascinating. It is related to William Branham, though indirectly, and it's a trail of research that definitely needs to be exposed. Christianity was weaponized by various individuals in the late 1800s and early 1900s, and some of those key players included the Nazis. We uncovered this briefly in our podcast about the Great Sedition Trial of 1944, but there is much more to the story. Christian fundamentalism was fully weaponized by key religious and political figures in multiple countries, and a war was waged on United States politics through religion. William Branham mentioned almost having been arrested for his part in this weaponization, which was the key to us unlocking that history once we learned that Roy E. Davis, F. Bosworth, Paul Rader, and others were connected to Gerald Burton Winrod, the Kansas Hitler. After releasing that, we found that Gordon Lindsay was working with one of the main actors in what would become the most brutal and corrupt religious systems in recent world history, leading to the white nationalists, the neo-Nazis, and more. Our plan going forward is to dive deeper into that investigation and publish that history. Some of you have given us some very old documents of Branham history that does not exist if you go to try to buy it at the cult headquarters. Others have contributed key information about various religious movements, and still others have sent us comparisons of the current religious extremists who are weaponizing religion today as part of the New Apostolic Reformation and comparing it to the history of Branhamism. William Branham Historical Research will shift mode of research to that, as our research on William Branham himself is now complete. Branham will still remain a historical marker, a central conduit linking many of these corrupt movements together, and will be mentioned from time to time, unfortunately, for his role in the plot to seize American Christianity. You'll soon begin to see research in that history, and the podcast will adjust to match that research. We're still deciding on co-hosts and the format going forward, and during the break, we plan to iron out all of those details. Many of you have asked also for us to focus on the current religious figures who have built empires on William Branham's legacy. There are plans to do this as well, though we may have to be very careful in how that is presented. Literally billions of dollars are at stake with these pseudo-Christian empires, and they have and will continue to attack what we and our partners do. Regardless, many of those questions will still be addressed, and as we've shown in our podcast, many new questions will also be raised. Stay tuned to william-branham.org for more updates.